Y'all gotta clap. Get loud. All right, all right, all right, all right. Well, it's so good to be back, and we're at the Highland Business Center. Shout out to Highland Business Center. All right, all right. We are on location. That's what we're gonna call it. We're on location at the Highland Business Center. Welcome back, y'all. It's season 4 of Table Topics. We've been doing this for 4 years. Shout out to that. All right. We are learning and getting to know everyone here at the college differently. Remember what we always talk about there? It's not just about the work that we do, but it's also about the people behind the work. So when we think about table topics, we want to come closer to each other, foster meaningful connections, and provide opportunities for learning and growth. And knowing who sits behind those chairs, who's working with students, who's working with our employees. It becomes so important. So we've made a few changes to table topics. We are including students in these conversations. We want to get to know them. But before we start with that, we've had a lot of different transition and change. So one of the first things I wanted to be able to do was to bring a special distinguished guest with me and spend our first half of the hour learning about the leader that helps transform, transition how we think about things, but also lays the foundation for strategy. So as we think about how we put students at the center of that work, we think about those leaders that are masterminds behind that help us and pass out those keys of success to support our students. So I'm excited that I have the opportunity to introduce and spotlight our guest for today, Dr. Monique Umphrey. Will y'all help me give her a big hand? So listen here, in-person crowd, for those that are watching us virtually, the in-person crowd is supposed to have a job. Your job to be done, because we don't have that classroom behind us like at the Make It Center. You know I say let's disturb that class just a little bit. So since we don't have a class, I want y'all to disrupt I-35, make the cars shake a little bit. So I'm gonna ask you again, give me a big round of applause for Dr. Monique Umphrey. All right, all right, all right. So Dr. Umphrey is the Provost and Executive Vice Chancellor of Academic and Student Affairs. For ACC, she's our Chief Academic Officer. And Dr. Umphrey leads strategic planning for the college's academic mission, which is focused on student success and community development. Dr. Umphrey is committed to success for all students and ensuring they have the skills and tools. You've heard her talk a lot about that, the skills and tools needed to succeed in their career pathways and thrive from a civic and economic perspective. So throughout college, we've begun to lead with the power of Clifton strengths, right? Our strengths help us understand how we get the most and best out of our people. As we discussed in our last episode, my strengths, so the team was trying to give me an acronym for our strengths, and I said, y'all ain't gonna remember that. So my strengths are belief. What's one of those other strengths y'all have heard that I say I'm really big in this strength? I'm competitive, right, Traci? I'm competitive. So I've got believe, competition, activator, strategic, and significance. So, Dr. Umphrey, can you please share with us your strengths and how have these defined you, and how do you think they help you lead systemic change?
Well, thank you for asking. My top 5, and I say this because every time I take the Clifton Strengths assessment, my strengths come out differently. And if you've taken the assessment, you realize that the strengths are ranked based on the role that you're in. And so for my current role, the last time I took the assessment, my top 5 were ideation, strategic, individualization, achiever, and maximizer. The last time I took it, futuristic came in the top 5. But achiever always comes out and maximizer always comes out in mine, just like competition's always going to come out in yours. Achiever is always going to come out in mine because I can't help, and learner normally always comes out in mine. I'm one of those people, I've been reading, I'm avid, voracious reader.
She sends a lot of articles, and I'm like, you're reading all the time. Like, yes.
but I love to read. That's part of being futuristic. But when I think about being a maximizer, um, when I think about who I am and what has shaped who I am, one of my role models and one of the people I really have respected in my journey was Shirley Chisholm. And when I think about her quotes, one of them that stood out to me was, I'm a catalyst for change. And when she said that, or when I first read that quote, it just resonated in my soul, deep down in my soul. And I meditated on that for a while. And in my leadership journey, I've come to realize one thing about myself, and that is that I'm not just a catalyst for change. When I really started to understand who I am, I'm a spark. I'm a catalyst of catalyst. So my role is, when you think about transformation and when you think about the transformative power of education, we talk about education and what is education really, what's the purpose of education? When I get excited about education, I think about the fact, what we love about education, what drew us into education, and what drew us into this field, and what draws us together, the common purpose. We believe in the transformative power of education to change lives. And we believe that education has the power to change family trees. People are drawn to education because they're looking for a different quality of life. And so when I think about why I was drawn to this work, I believe that when we're at our best, we have the ability to help other people see things in themselves that they can't see. And so as an educator, it's our job to elucidate and to bring forth those things out of them, to help them see those things in themselves. And so as a catalyst, to help individuals, whether it's one-on-one or whether it's in the classroom. Sometimes it's out of the classroom. It's not always about the learning outcomes for that class. Sometimes it's your interactions with the individuals. But when we're talking about the overall educational interactions, it's helping people to become better, helping people to see the best in themselves, helping people to become the best that they can absolutely be. And so taking it a few steps back, who I am is a person that can help other people see their best, and also as a catalyst for change, helping other people see their ability to be a catalyst for change. So when we, as you all have taken those innovation quizzes, think about that. So I recommended the innovation assessment so you could see who you were as an innovator. Okay? So starting the innovation journey, you might not have even thought of yourself as an innovator, but each one of you is. At a different level, at a different space, in a different time, but each one of you is. And so helping you to see exactly who you are so you can start your individual journey. And we'll all get there. The great thing about it is where it doesn't have a definite beginning or definite end. When we think about things like Transform Ed, people ask me, like, when does it end? It's an evolution. We'll continue. There's phase 1, then there's phase 2. We'll, get ready, but that's the exciting thing. We continue to evolve. And so as a maximizer, it's my job to help people see those things in themselves so they can grow and evolve and continue to grow and evolve.
Dr. Umphrey, one of the things you talked about and one of your strengths from Clifton Strengths was related to individualization. And I don't know if it's the complete definition of it, but just listening to you talk and you talked about being that catalyst for change and thinking about you being a spark. And you shared helping the individual see the best in them. And I can give an example as I think about my next question for you is Dr. Umphrey saw something in me and I was like, yeah, so I don't know if I can do this, but she was like, yeah, but I'm looking at what you're doing and I'm gonna challenge you and I'm gonna push you. I'm gonna push you out of this nest of what you think is comfortable, and you're gonna hate it along the way, but there's something I see on the other side based on your skill. So that individualization in you is what you see in people that people don't know that you're seeing, and that sometimes you can't always explain what the future on the other side is, but I need you to do these things first. And so I see that in how you work individually with people.
Individualization is very important because leadership is understanding that success is not a cookie cutter approach. You can't take what you did at your last institution and bring it in and force feed it. Everyone needs different things to maximize their potential. Period. And so you have to really listen to the individual to understand what makes them work. What are their triggers? Don't push their buttons. If you have to understand that they come with trauma. Respect that. Don't activate their traumas, right?
So as a catalyst for change, and you think about the mission, and you've spoke a lot about skills and tools when you talk about students, could you share some of the most rewarding experiences or sparks that you've had with students, especially in the terms of creating space for their voices and advocacy? How do these experiences continue to shape the leader you are today?
When I was in Cleveland, it was Cleveland Codes, creating a software development boot camp for the students, because that in Cleveland, the average income for African Americans was $22,000. The average income for whites was $44,000. So creating a software boot camp for people where the average income was $55,000 after 16 weeks. So that was life changing for the students. In Houston, it was creating honors college for the students when an honors college didn't exist. That was life-changing for the students because it was helping students to see that they were scholars too, that they deserved an honors college. Here, being able to advocate for the neurobats, helping them to see their brilliance. They already are brilliant, but helping them just escalating their presence. They already had leadership, but just giving them a microphone for their leadership.
I want to take you back to something that you said when I said, yes, you are always reading. And I think that that's important, whether it's an article, whether it's a book, whether it's a snippet, whether it's a TikTok, or whether it's a snap. But what's important that what you see in there, you see, you know how people say, well, what's behind the question? What's behind the content? So as you talk about giving a voice, and you're always reading, looking at data, seeing what's behind there, and also thinking about the impact that it could have, both positive and negative in a way in terms of what we don't step in it.
Mm-hmm.
So as we think about that, your commitment to transformational change as being this constant learner, not learner for yourself, but learner in how to help. How has that been a big part of your journey? How has that been a driver for you in your career? And how can it impact us all here at ACC?
For me, my sister taught me how to read when I was 4. And so, she would give me little maxims, readers are leaders. And I believed her, like, wow, okay. And so always having a book, reading what gave me the ability to transport to other worlds. And so whether it was fiction, nonfiction, what I realized early was having the ability to read and pick up new information. It gave me the ability to learn about other cultures, learn about other experiences, experience new things, and widen my perspective, challenge my own paradigm. And so, what I was able to experience from that was I was able to challenge some of my own perspectives. If any of you have seen or played around with the Opportunity Atlas, uh, according to the Opportunity Atlas, it gives you, you can put any zip code in the world, and it'll tell you with that zip code uh, the likelihood of the success factors for children that live in that zip code, what they're supposed to make when they grow up based on where they are right now. So according to that Opportunity Atlas, I was supposed to make $22,000 a year based on where I grew up. And I'll just tell you that being able to be exposed to different things, different cultures, different experiences was life-changing for me. And again, the transformative power of education, being exposed to different cultures, having role models and mentors and good parents has all been life-changing for me. And I hope that by creating learning environments for our students that are life-changing, that are optimal environments for our students, we create environments where they can thrive, where they can find, they have the tools to tap into their best selves, where they can do the same things.
And so how do you create or work with us as employees to pick up that spark that you have and just how you look at things? What does courage look like for you, for us, in the realm of that, the transformational change that we're going through now?
I'm glad that you mentioned courage first, because when we think about the 4 values, I just listened to a speech by Maya Angelou the other day, and she said out of all of the virtues, courage is the most important, because you can't be kind if you don't have the courage to do that. You can't be any of those things if you don't have courage first. And so if you think about all of them, looking at your t-shirt, if you don't have courage, you can't be compassionate, because sometimes with all of those things, you might have to be on an island. And so there will be times when you will have to be on an island by yourself, and you'll have to demonstrate those values. And you'll have to have the courage to do that alone. And there have been many times in my life where I've had to have the courage to do that alone. And you might be ridiculed for the things that you have to do, or you might be, people might tell you no, or you might have to stand up for a decision or advocate for students and say, I think the right decision is X, and people might disagree with you. But you might have to stand strong on that island and say, I'm adamant that the right thing for these students is X. It takes courage to say that. So to have that spark, you have to be very adamant about your values. You have to be steadfast about what you believe in. And you have to be very clear about your integrity.
So I want to lean into that just a little bit more as we think about the theory of change and you serving as one of the tri-chairs, correct? Mm-hmm. Let's lean into courage and we think about those design teams. Can you kind of give us an idea of when you think about our values and all that design team may have to go through as you talk about the island and what they see, what they're going to know, what they will have to stand in sometimes, and how they will have to push through and explain. Can you talk us through that a little bit more?
Absolutely. So I think it's important to think of the triangle, and at the top is our North Star. What are we trying to achieve? We're not going through the theory of change for giggles and other things. We're going through this work because we want to improve outcomes for our students. Ultimately, again, the transformative power of education. We're not doing this for some random metrics. We're doing this for improved quality of life for our students. If we start with the North Star, if we start with the framework and the thought, I want to make sure that our students have a better quality of life. If you start with the perspective, the 70% completion is from the perspective that we want to make sure that more students are leaving achieving the goal that they came here for. It's not some random number, but we want to make sure that more students leave here achieving what they came here to do. If you start with that end in mind, then as you approach a design team, then that should help inform that work. As you think, if you're on a design team and you start the work and you think, how might we? That helps you inform every design team. You should approach it from the perspective, how might we redesign this, whatever this swim lane is? How might we redesign this work in a way in which we could remove barriers for the students? Think about every single swim lane in a way that if we could take it back to 1973 and start from scratch and redesign it without the existing way, without saying we've always done it this way, or we have to do it in triplicate forms, or we have to do it with this Google Doc, or however we're used to doing it. But if we could do it in a way that's best for the students, how might we do it in a way that would bring joy to the student's face? How might we do it in a way that would allow the students to actually go about their day and not cause extra stress for them? How might we do it in a way that reminds them of how they go about the rest of their life? You know how they're able to swipe left on apps in the rest of their life, and they're used to simplicity in other applications? How might we bring that type of simplicity and ease to their life in our world? How might we think differently about the processes that we have, that they could come to ACC and say, I want to come here, have a great class with Queen Samantha, and have a great experience and not have to think about bureaucracy? How might we redesign things in a way that they can do that, take care of their kids, or if they don't have kids and whatever, but how might we think about things differently in a way that brings them joy, where they remember ACC in fond ways?
So I'm gonna lean again because she dropping some jewels over here. So when you first started Transform Ed and had that vision, and I've told you it's like a gold mine. I just think it's amazing in terms of when you set the stage and you talk about how might we, and you talk to there's a superintendent that used to be in this region, and he talked about how education was initially designed. We think about K-12 and the Industrial Revolution, and just all of how everything was set up. If you think about those that were working for industry and manufacturing or whatever it may be, it was about the bell schedule was based on a certain time. Sitting at desk was like the assembly line. But look at what we're still doing, and we're in 2024 in the 21st century. And when you originally sat down, I know me, Anna, and Mitos were like, okay, help us understand Transform Ed. And you started and you explained the community college, and you talked about those individuals that had to talk about how might we, and you started from that. Will you explain that a little bit? And then through that, it's a perfect segue when the next group comes to talk about Transform Ed to help that lay that foundation for the understanding of Transform Ed. It was powerful for us to know then what to do.
I want you, because we treat everything that we do now as golden canon. we cannot touch things because it's been this way for 50 years. But I want you to go back, if you listen to the founders, and they'll tell you what they did on those original days. But they didn't have a golden checklist. They came in and they figured it out. No one told them. They didn't have clear guidelines. They came in and they figured it out for the students, how to enroll them, how to get classes going. We are working with the processes that they started, but nothing was magical. And when I talk, I've had chances to sit at dinner with the people that started the colleges. I've talked to people, and I'm not going to name names to protect the innocent, but I've had dinner with them, and I've talked to them ad nauseum about how was it when you started X college? And they were like, I was 24 years old and I was scared blank. And they talked about how they figured it out as they went. You know, we make comments about flying the plane and building it as we go. That's what many of them were doing. And I'm not knocking it. I'm saying we stand on the shoulders of giants. We have to respect the work of the giants that have come before us, that enable us to be here. The seal of ACC is because so many people have put their blood, sweat, and tears for this institution to stay here, to be here. And all the people that have put so much work. I talked to at the last Provost Shining Star Awards, I talked to the lady that created the start here, get there. She created that. And she mentioned it like casually. She was like, you know that saying? I mentioned that at a foundation meeting. And I'm like, say what? That's amazing. I'm sharing all this with you to say we can't stay married to how we do things. We stay married to our values. But if there's a better way that we can do something, a more effective way that we can do something, we have to be open to change. Companies like Amazon and Apple have been open to change. That's how the iPhone was created. And we have to be open to the evolution for change so that we can remain relevant, so that 50 years from now, students can still come through these doors.
So I only have 2 questions, and I'm watching the time. So here's a question she doesn't know that I'm going to ask her. So, in this question, this is related to our own values as a college, and one of those values is joy. And remember, we always start with table topics talking about, we want to know more about the person behind the work, and we've learned so much more about Dr. Umphrey in these 25 minutes. But there's one more piece that I would love for you to share under joy. And when you think about yourself, you think about your family, and you think about your friends, what brings you joy?
Ooh. Well, I think most of you have heard me talk about my children, probably ad nauseum. You know that I have 2 girls. They're 28 and 30. And I love my girls. You know I love my girls. They're Alexia and Olivia. But I have 2 grandsons. And they are amazing. They are 9 and 9 months old. And so, yeah. They're amazing. Isaiah is 9, and then Carlos, better known as K3, is 9 months old. So he is a character. And you cannot meet them without just having a big, big smile. And so It is a gift from God to be a grandparent. If anybody is a grandparent, you understand, and you're not going to make me cry at all. It is joy. My dad always said it's being a grandparent is God's reward for not killing your teenage children. And I had girls, so I'll leave it at that. But my grandsons are amazing, and my grandson Carlos K3 just started walking last week. He took his first steps. Yeah, he did. I have videos, and they came here for Easter, and it was amazing. He took 2 steps while he was here, but he took like 3 or 4 steps last week, and yeah, he's precious. And the other thing that gives me absolute joy is my new dog, and y'all have heard me talk about him. I have a rescue dog named Maxwell, and I've had him for a month, and if anybody knows, he's a chow chow, and he's gorgeous. He's a mix between a lion and a teddy bear, so he is just gorgeous, and he reminds me of the balance between life and not getting out of control with too much work, even though, everything else, but he keeps things in balance. So, yeah, those are the things that bring me joy.
See, I promised I wasn't going to be.
Yeah.
So last but certainly not least, during the pandemic, when we started Table Topics, it was originally shout-outs. And so with shout-outs, Dr. Umphrey, we always end a segment with our distinguished guests to ask, who would you like to shout out? As you just think about everything that you've talked about, who would you like to shout out? Kick your shouts out to whomever you'd like.
Wow, that's easy. I have the best so I'm going to take point of personal privilege. I have the best administrative assistant in the world. Grant Henning is in the back.
Shout out, Grant.
Grant keeps me glued, okay? He makes sure that everything is together, and he's so good at what he does. He actually gives coaching to other administrative assistants on a national level, okay?
Grant!
That's how good he is. And I have the fortunate ability to work with great president of the Faculty Senate, Juan Molina, and each previous Faculty Senate president was great. Dr. Nancy Stano, Dr. Samantha Croft, great ability to advocate for faculty. But I also want to shout out, those people do their jobs really well, but I have to shout out one additional person, and that is Professor Lakeisha Barrett. And and the reason I want to shout her out today is when I think about our values, courage, compassion, joy, and yes, she was exemplifying those before it was cool. And her students acknowledged that. So I just want to give her a special shout out today.
That's so awesome. All right, I-35 is behind us. Y'all know what y'all got to do. If y'all would help me so much and thank Dr. Monique Umphrey for spending this time with us today. All right. All right. Our next segment, Dr. Umphrey did an amazing job in segueing us into that Transform Ed space. We are going to bring in 1/3 of Transform Ed. It's the swim lane or 2/3. Where's the, oh yeah, 3/3. Wait, don't have me on camera not doing math right. Come on. So 1/3, we have 3 swim lanes, correct? We have instruction, we have TLED, and we have student affairs. I invited our student affairs, Transform Ed, swim lane to come join us because they're going to be kicking their shouts out to all their fabulous colleagues in all the swim lanes. If you would please join me, please now. Give them a big round of applause. Woo! So, all right, Dr. Umphrey gave us some great information about Transform Ed. And now I've welcomed you. I'm going to do better on the cards. I've already welcomed them. And they've been hard at work over the past few months helping lead our ongoing research efforts, understanding that why related to Transform Ed is so important. So with us today, we have Traci Allen, Director of Academic Coaching and Initiatives.
Thank you.
Vincent Bustillos, Recruitment Manager. Jana McCarthy, SIS Core Team Lead. And last but certainly not least, and we just met this morning, so we've been together all day. She's gonna be tired of me on this Friday. Karen Serna, Director of Student Financial Wellness and Financial Aid Outreach. All right, are y'all ready? Take a deep breath. I've got all the hard questions for you this afternoon. All right, so we're gonna start with Karen. Can you tell us a little bit about the product, but not all about the product that you're working with? Yes, because some of it is secret. No trade secret check, because we want to surprise, River Bad Experience, all of that.
Okay, I'm putting my notes down.
Tell us a little bit about what you've been working on. And they didn't know I was going to ask this question as an add-on. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit, not just about the one, but the others too.
Mm. Okay, so
she's gonna kill me.
All right, so we have been having just a fabulous time together as a team, and I'm going to tell you about what we're working on right now, and then I think I'm going to let Jana follow up with some of the other pieces that we did do some work on. So what has really stuck with us is the issue of housing insecurity among our students. And so we are envisioning a future where housing insecurity is just not a thing, right? That students here know where they are going to live and they've got a safe, affordable place throughout their time as an ACC student and beyond, right? Because we know that when students have safe, affordable housing, that they then can concentrate on getting through and getting to their credential.
Let me jump in. Can I ask you a question? How did you get there?
Good question. We spent the entire fall semester just being very intentional at looking at just the immense amount of data that we have on our students, and really doing some work around design thinking and building empathy, and really thinking about what minimal viable product could we produce that could change things for our students for the better. And so I can't tell you all the details of what we're working on. That's all in this little piece of paper right here.
Plan B.
But we are redefining how our students identify and find housing while they are a student. Can I say any more?
Name it. Yeah, name it.
It's called Housing Connect.
See, I'm trying to hold for when the big reveal happens. I didn't want them to reveal it all here. So in that process, though, one of the things that you all went through was y'all had to push back hard on other leaders at the college in terms of this was the right place to go. Will you share a little bit more about how you had to think deeply about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, one of the powerful pieces of Transform Ed is that there's 6 of us in the Student Affairs Transform Ed group, and we have been given this opportunity to carve out some time to be really intentional and do some really deep thinking and conversation about all of this data that we have. And then, yes, we have to, when we're going out and kind of gathering that data and talking to leadership, we get all kinds of inputs, right? All kinds of inputs. And so as a team, what we have to do is kind of digest all of that input and say, okay, we have to focus on one thing. We have to be laser focused on that. And we've done that as a team. We've been able to just come back and say, yeah, we want to do everything. And even still today, yesterday we met and we started thinking, but we need to do this. And what if we do this? And what if we do this? And have we thought about that? We have thought about so many things. But what it comes back to is we are creating a minimal viable product, right? And so what that really means is this is the first iteration, right? And once we've got this minimal viable product, then we get to start thinking about what it looks like 2 years from now, 3 years from now, a decade from now.
You know what's so interesting? I'm watching Dr. Umphrey in your peripheral, and she's hearing you speak that language. It's a part of, and you're saying minimal viable product. It's like, but But y'all have gone through an intense amount of understanding of that design thinking process. And that other part of pushing back on all those different opinions and voices was that you always took it back to the student. You always took it back to helping those that had the additional professional experience, whether they brought it here, learned it, whatever. You took it back to the student. You took it back to the data. So then they could then empathize because you'd gone through your journey of empathy. So then, Jana, my next question is for you. What was the Transform Ed process? What has it been like up to this point? And what are the next steps for your team in the coming weeks and months?
Okay. So I will say the Transform Ed process has really been a journey of discovery. In the fall semester, we were inundated with data in a good way. It was a good thing. We really learned so much about student needs and what we can do to address the challenges that they face. We always knew that there were important issues out there to deal with students, but as we learned and we looked at the data, it was so encouraging and motivating, and it got us to a place where we could create something that was going to make an impact for our students. So, we explored all kinds of issues. We explored housing, we explored accessibility, we explored a lot of different things, and so. Eventually in the spring, we got to the point where we needed to make a decision about choosing what we were going to work on, and that's where Housing Connect came from, because we decided that was the most impact that we could help for our students right away, and deal with that.
Will you share what those other ideas were?
I will. So we really had two, at the beginning of the spring, we had two products that we were most interested in doing. One was Housing Connect, and the other was a product called BatBot, which was an opportunity to create an AI personal assistant for students, a student-facing AI personal assistant here at ACC, which I hope is still going to be something that may eventually take place.
Shameless plug.
Somehow. So hopefully that is still something that can happen. But our ultimate decision was to go with Housing Connect because it was something that is absolutely necessary. I personally dealt with a student who had to leave his classes this semester because he was homeless, and so he had to deal with that. And so it was very personal to all of us to have that immediate impact on students' basic needs.
I think the beauty of all of that was that y'all had to push too, because they had to push themselves because their ideas were amazing, but they had to push themselves and really thinking about and going back to the data and having that empathy to make a tough decision, and that's what leaders do, right? And because people will ask those questions, and we talked about that all the time. Well, why didn't you do that? And they ask those questions, but going back to that empathy piece and helping people understand. So Traci, the Chancellor has talked at length about the different departments of the college needing not to be individual threads, but to be woven together to work across departments as we love our students to success. How have you seen that happen within Transform Ed so far?
Yeah, I think Transform Ed was the perfect model to build that because it was, like we said, there was 3 swim lanes that we called it. There were 6 of us representing student affairs. There was a faculty group and a TEAD-led group. So while we're all doing our own things, kind of working really hard individually, once a month we would come together for a full day, all 3 groups, and everything from data deep dives to student panels to outside community. We had the demographer from Austin come. We had IBM do product design and product management with us. And then we would break into smaller groups amongst the 3. And again, we talked about empathy, having those collaborative conversations with those who are in the classroom, behind the classroom, training faculty for the classroom. That was the foundation of understanding our different roles and the different lenses that we bring, and we had to have courageous conversations. Sometimes, if this is what I see from my perspective, and that's where we push back, it was always about, we have 3 personas for Housing Connect that we picked, and every time there was that, you got to stand up for something, and you explain that persona of who that student is and why, and then we're all on the same page. It's just having the space for the dialogue, and Transform Ed gave us that space to have that dialogue, and so I'm confident that, that foundation of that model, and I'm with the design teams over the next year, we've already started that foundation for that thread to start weaving, as they say. So this was the foundation for that, and we saw what happens if we collaborate and talk, and it worked really well.
You know what I saw? We also got an opportunity to get to know each other, as opposed to being us versus them. Did you feel how, we really got to understand from the perspective of each person, each group. How did you feel in that regard when you were working in those different teams?
Absolutely. I mean, and we laughed because we would say things like, "I didn't know you did that," or and we're like, "Really?" And they'd say something like, "You that happens in the classroom." I mean, those aha moments where we're so ingrained in our role in what we see, and then when you get to know someone, and then like I said, the personalities come out. When you learn, we did some icebreaker things, and oh my gosh, both have dogs named Max or whatever it is. I mean, prior to starting Transform Ed, I didn't know probably half of the people in that room, and that's half the people I can pick up a phone call right now, and have a conversation with either something personal in common that we have found or something professionally. We have built those bridges, and sometimes we're in our lanes, we don't know who to call and who it is. We got to let go of that and be not afraid because of the title of who it is, and just be able to have courageous conversation to make that change.
Knowing people and getting to know people from the different areas within the college, those are the ways that we can feel like a small community and still do big things. But you have to know people. So not being small and doing small things that don't push us to reap the rewards, so our students can realize where they're trying to go. But we can do big things because we feel like community, so our students can reap those big awards. Thanks so much for that. So Vincent, what have you learned about yourself during this process, and what have you learned about our students and their needs?
So, something that I've learned about myself is probably to be more open to artificial intelligence and using AI in my everyday work. Um, AI can be beneficial for students, faculty, and staff, um, like data analytics and also virtual or chatbots in general. And I've learned to be more open to that. Um, I do have a student in mind that I was thinking about when we were all discussing Housing Connect. One of my student workers, our hourlies, gives tours, and another prospective student asked if the housing around ACC, if we receive discounts as a student, and my hourly employee that was giving the tour said, unfortunately, no, there is no discount, there is no nothing. These apartments are extremely expensive. I don't see myself getting in one of them anytime soon. And that kind of hurt a little bit because they come to school here, they walk by these beautiful apartments, and it's something that cannot be touched right now, at least while they're in school. So Housing Connect would help that student, help a lot of students. Um, and I thought to myself, this would be really beneficial for our students to gain housing. Another thing is they are in Ascender and they found their roommates through Ascender. So because they have three roommates, they're able to afford housing, and this is a component in Housing Connect that we would address with the students. So that's one of the things.
I really appreciate you sharing that. I think, it makes us, that empathy goes back into putting ourselves in our students' shoes, but also thinking about the beauty behind collaboration. So Karen kind of talked a little bit about, first iteration, this is the first minimal viable product, but you never know what can be unveiled, as we keep getting better at the work that we do. So Jana, I think I have the last question for you before we kind of kick some shouts out and see if there's any questions out there in the audience or in virtual space. We know that there's still plenty of work to do to build better systems for our students and staff, but what excites you about ACC's future and the future of Transform Ed?
Oh, I think the theory of change and Transform Ed happening right here at the start of everything that's ahead of us is the most exciting. The fact that we're able here in Transform Ed to be a part of this thing that's about to start is really exciting. To be innovative and to tackle change with courage and to move forward with that is really important. Things like Housing Connect and all the other innovative efforts that are happening right now, even before the design teams start, is really it's so cool. It's so cool to be a part of of already addressing those basic needs right now, even before we get into the design teams. Personally, I'm excited about the world-changing things that we're doing here. I'm completely on board, and I'm excited for all the things that we're going to do for our students and colleagues. And looking ahead, I can't wait to see what other things we come up with AI and all of the other options that are just going to explode onto availability over the next few years.
So here's a question that they don't know that I'm going to ask them. And it's related to decision making. I know y'all recall a time when y'all had to make some decisions. I was in the room with you. Going through the process of Transform Ed and thinking about your role as a leader at this college and going through this process, what has Transform Ed taught you in terms of making decisions, making tough decisions, and it's not personal, but making the decisions?
You want to start? You want me to start? Okay. I think for me, it has brought me into a realm where I ask questions of others because I don't understand their point of view. I know my swim lane very well, but I don't have as much experience in other areas. And working with my colleagues in this has taught me to ask for that data and then to understand it and then to be comfortable to continue to ask why. Continue to ask those questions to deeply understand, because I might not be an expert in that area, but I can at least help and support them in that area if I understand more of what they're doing.
The only thing I think to add is we kind of created group norms. We have all of our meetings, and one of our norms was before we got into any type of decision making, everyone had to go around the room and give space to everyone to share something about the work, or if it's something about personal or something like that. And I think that has stuck with me of, I know maybe there's a decision I'm going to have to share, and I know maybe half a team's not going to like it, but every person's going to have a chance to express how they feel about it so they can understand it. So I think a lot of times we're moving so fast, like, just trust me, I was in the meeting, the data's there, we got to act, but that's not fair to everyone who you're asking to buy into the decision. They need to know why. So let them have the space to ask the question why. And once everyone's heard, I think everyone understands, but I think everyone needs to have a chance to be heard in order to move on with the decision, if that makes sense.
Will you tell them about a time, because I'm getting somewhere, y'all know me. Will you tell them about a time when you sat in the room and you thought I was going to make the decision for you?
I was going to talk about that.
Go for it, Karen.
Oh my goodness. All right, y'all. So there was this time not too long ago where we had this like pitch your product type of presentation. So we all kind of gave our product pitches. And then Dr. Buchanan handed us little slips of paper and said, write what you vote, which we should push forward. And so we all like took our time. We're like, okay, and we wrote our little response down.
You didn't start with, you said, well, just tell us, just pick for us.
Oh, we did. We were like, can't you just pick, please? That's right, I forgot that begging part. And she said, no. She's like, put your vote on a little piece of paper. So we all did that. We crumpled it up. Dr. Buchanan and Dr. Kehoe, who's here, right? We're like, okay, we'll be back with a decision. And so they like left the room and we were just chatting, and then they came back in and they said, okay, it's up to you. And so we were like, well, what were you talking about out there?
Why did we have to
what
vote
do
if
you
you're...
mean? And so they left the room and they said, this is your work, and as a team, you need to decide where you go from here. And we all had a moment of panic, but then we brought it together, and then we did the work of having those really hard conversations, because it was really difficult, because we were all talking about projects that we individually had kind of come up with and put a lot of work in. So it was very personal, right? But we pushed through it, and we're stronger, and we've got a stronger product because of that.
Yeah. And it went back to the student and what are our needs right now. Mm-hmm. And that was what was so important. All right, y'all, I'm taking the heat off of you and just saying, kick your shouts out.
All right, I got.
Oh wait, Vince, you had something to add?
Oh no, I was ready to shout out. I was ready to.
He said, "I'm ready to shout out." He's like, "I don't want to go back there, Dr. Umphrey."
Which kind of comes back to two of the individuals that I want to shout out they're not here, so they've been a very big component to the MVP and through this process, and Erico Tyner and Patricia Fee are two of the big personalities and people that we want to shout out.
Yes, there's 6 of us, and they're the 2 who couldn't be here, so they're part of the team. I want to give 2 shout outs to Dr. Umphrey for having the courage to design this, Transform Ed. And like I said, I think this has built the foundation for this change of theory. I mean, everything that's going to happen, and how lucky we are to be part of the first. We all feel like we're distinguished. We're going to have alumni that were the honor roll class or whatever. But
She's pitching for a T-shirt.
yes,
Yes, please.
And Dr. Kehoe, we want to give a huge shout out. The last couple weeks, she has given us the guidance and being very patient with us on the actual design of the prototype. So this big idea that we had, we can actually see it and play with it, and not giving away what it is. But but she just has given us so much guidance, and it's been really fun to really push us outside of anything 6 months ago, there was no way I thought I could ever do something like that.
I want to call out a couple other people. 2 of them are here. But Curtis Stevens and Dr. Janelle Green have been pivotal in this, in our early learning, with them sharing their experiences from Future Festival and innovation and thinking in an innovative way. We also need to include Anna Rummer, Sarah Lisenby, and Mira Suniga, who keep us moving, keep us organized, and keep us going and staying on track. And then, of course, we need to thank Dr. Buchanan for teaching us to trust the process as we worked to get to Housing Connect.
And I am shouting out Dr. Martinez along with Dr. Colane Haig and Dr. Servini, who before the Data Summit was the Data Summit. We got our own personal Data Summit that not only included institutional data, but data about the Central Texas area, and we really appreciate that.
I'm going to jump in. I feel like a part of your swim lane. I'm going to thank Stephanie Long, because I don't think everyone realizes how much work it takes that goes into pulling all 3 swim lanes together.
Yes.
and being able to connect all of our colleagues together in a meaningful way. And so that takes a lot of yes, because I know when we first started putting the agenda, she was just like, yes, okay. So thank you for that. So are there any questions, y'all, from our audience? Yes, please.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for this. My question is for you, Dr. Umphrey. You briefly mentioned the innovation assessment that those who will be working on design teams will have to take. I'm curious if you could talk about the balance between innovation and stability that's needed for both staff, faculty, and students as we navigate big change.
Excellent point. One of the things that I talk about in work in general is you have to understand capacity for change. So if an organization is talking about innovation, many times if I were to go out and do consulting for another college, not ACC, the first thing that I would do is to do an assessment of the organization's capacity for change. Okay? I would do an assessment of the organization and look at their capacity for change. I would look at their stability right now. I would, one of the first factors I would look at is what is their stability matrix? How stable are their operations right now? If their operations are not stable, there are 2 things. If their operations are not stable, then either they need a lot of innovation because, let me put it a different way. I'm trying to put this delicately and politically at the same time. Change is not mandatory, but survival is not mandatory either. You understand what I'm saying? You have to have stable operations. And so the first baseline that we do when I'm working with, because I've done consulting for various colleges, is to understand the organization's baseline of their operational work. And so you have to understand when I was in corporate, we looked at it as 70-30. There's a 70% capacity that you have to do to keep the lights on. You understand what I'm saying? When you have a job description, that's your operational work. At the minimum, you're going to do 70% of your time to keep the lights on. In a highly innovative company, they spend a minimum of 20% of their time on innovation work. Google used to allow their people to spend they would have on their time clocks, people would charge their time, 20% of their time to innovation work. But that was an innovative company with a culture for innovation. They had a history of innovation. If your college or your company does not have a history of innovation, that's a different baseline, and you have to start where you are. The worst thing that you can do as a person or a company is to try to pretend you're something that you're not. You have to start where you are. So that's why the assessments are important. Understand who you are and don't try to pretend to be something that you're not. So understand if you are not, let me say this in a politically correct way, get the fundamentals down first, like you're playing a sport. If you're trying to play basketball, don't try to do a 360 dunk and be in the dunk contest if you don't know how to shoot free throws. You understand what I'm saying? Get the fundamentals down first. Get your base competencies down first. Don't try to be on a design team if you're on a performance plan for your basic responsibilities for your job. Get the fundamentals down first. Make sure that you're performing at a high level on the base fundamentals for your role. If you're doing the base fundamentals well, then you can do the extras. Make sense? If you're performing at a high level, then you can look at some extra wow, whiz, ooh, I can do some extra stuff now. Does that make sense? Don't try to do runs and singing if you don't know the scales. Make sense? I'm trying to give some analogies here to make it make a little sense. Let's start with the basics and then add some extras. That's all I'm trying to say. Get the fundamentals down first, then add extra stuff.
Y'all,
Make sense?
I don't think we should ask any other questions because she did a mic drop moment there with that. Did you have anything else to add, Dr. Umphrey, with that? Y'all, I just appreciate y'all's time here. I appreciate all of our guests, Dr. Umphrey, Karen, Jana, Traci, Vincent. Again, I-35 is behind you. If you would help me give a big, loud applause to our guests today. Don't forget to grab you some food. Our next episode of Table Topics will be on July 19th, and I'll be joined by our Chancellor, Dr. Russell Lowry Hart, for an exciting discussion about all things ACC. Don't forget to RSVP and nominate your colleagues or a team at austincc.edu/table topics. We have some beautiful gifts coming up, and if you would kick my theme music, we're out of here. Y'all have an amazing weekend.